Hey, what's up everyone? I haven't done any videos on this channel for a while now, and I apologize. I've just been kind of doing life and all the insanity that comes with it. Recently, my wife and I opened a vintage toy store, so my focus has really been on that and on school. So I haven't really had much time to do any blind buys or anything like that. We were planning on selling our house, so all of my music's pretty much packed up in storage, and I haven't really bought anything new lately. So I haven't really given this channel that much love. Like most things in life, I tend to start things and never finish them. Welcome to ADHD. But I wanted to take a second and just do something that I've wanted to do for a while. There's a video I've wanted to record for quite some time. I am a huge fan of the band Motion City Soundtrack. I have seen them countless times. I've been to almost every tour since 2003 that's come through here. And I found out about them in 2003 by one of my best friends. He was a big fan of the band. He let me borrow I Am the Movie, and I fell in love. So I wanted to take a minute to go through and just kind of do a ranking of my favorite Motion City Soundtrack releases. Anyone who's followed me on Instagram for quite some time has seen my Motion City Soundtrack collection, which I think is pretty impressive. I'm not usually one to brag, but I have a lot of stuff, a lot of imports, a lot of promos, a lot of things that didn't make it out to the mass market. So so I wanted to just kind of take a minute and rank my favorite Motion City Soundtrack albums. So here it is. So for this ranking, I'm going to be looking at all 25 of the releases of Motion City Soundtrack, and you're probably thinking, how am I going to rank 25 albums when there's only 6? I'm going to be including 7-inches, splits, EPs, as well as their full-length albums. So in total, we're going to be looking at 25 different albums. I am a CD collector. On top of that, I'm also an artist. So if something only came out on vinyl and I have access to the tracks, which I've had access to all of these tracks, especially older stuff, for quite some time since I was in high school, and I've transferred them onto CD and made full CD layouts. So you'll see some stuff throughout here that's going to look different than the vinyl versions because it was only released on vinyl, specifically the 7-inches and a handful of splits. So you'll see my CD version that I made for my own collection in it. So let's get started. At number 25, I have the Promenade Carolina 7-inch. This was the very first release from the band. It's not a bad release by any means. You can tell that they're young and still trying to find their way. It's not synth-driven like you have later on. It's not as poppy. It's more straightforward indie rock, very 90s sounding. It came out in 1999, so you can tell that it's definitely inspired by a lot of 90s indie rock stuff. And it's just not one that I go back to much. I appreciate the 2 tracks for what they are, but it's not 2 where I find myself drifting to them very often. This is a release that was only available on 7-inch. I'm pretty sure it was white vinyl. That was the only colorway, maybe red vinyl as well. I can't remember. But this was the very first release of the band. This is one of the, like I said, it was never released on CD. I made the CD as part of a 7-inch box set that I put together just to kind of have this stuff physically on my shelf. So number 25, Promenade Carolina 7-inch. At number 24, I have the Motion City Soundtrack Shotzi split. It's an okay split. This was when I first got into the band. I went through and just downloaded everything I could find. And this was actually the copy. This was the version of Capital H that I listened to for many, many years. Well, not many years, but I would say probably many months prior to actually buying I Am the Movie. So this right here, it has Throwdown, Capital H, and Back to the Beat on it. The version of Back to the Beat is different than it is on the EP. And same with Capital H, and then Throwdown is obviously pretty much exclusive to this. I don't know if it appeared on any other EPs. I'm not sure off the top of my head. But either way, the 3 tracks on it are good. I like the versions that were recorded on other albums better. and it's just not one that I come back to much. I don't really care for the Shotzi tracks that much either, so it doesn't make it as memorable of a release for me. At number 23, I have an album that I don't own on CD. Instead, it was only available online through iTunes, and it is the Lollapalooza album, the EP Live at Lollapalooza. And it's live tracks. It's not anything memorable. It's nothing that I come back to ever. You'll see another album on here where it's live tracks, and I don't really visit it often. But if you like live EPs, if you like live music, I would check it out. It's cool for what it is. At number 22, I have the Split with Wonder Years. And this album here is one where I don't want to say I didn't care about it, but I wasn't as excited for it as I've been for other releases. I like early Wonder Years stuff, but I'm not a huge fan of the band. So for me, it was one where I was like, oh, that's cool. Essentially what it is the vocalists of each band switch and play their song. So this one here has Motion City Soundtrack doing It's a Pleasure to Meet You with the singer for the Wonder Years, and the Wonder Years doing a song for Patsy Cline with Justin Pierre. So it's one that I rarely go back to. The songs are good, but they're nothing great. They're nothing to write home about. And I would prefer to listen to the regular version of It's a Pleasure to Meet You, which, when it comes to the album it was released on, is one of my least favorite songs on it. So that's why this one ranks so low. It's just not one that I visit often. At number 21, I have the Capital H Mary Without Sound 7-inch. Again, this was only released in a 7-inch. This was only available, I believe, to people who did VIP during the tour that was, I believe, either the reunion tour or the tour that happened right before COVID hit. I can't remember off the top of my head. I was able to get a copy of the 7-inch from somebody who went to the tour and did the VIP. I didn't do the VIP for that tour, but I was able to secure a copy of the 7-inch. I just wanted to go ahead and make sure that I had it in CD form. The songs are cool. I mean, they're different versions of Capital H and Mary Without Sound. Mary Without Sound is one of my favorite songs on I Am the Movie. So to hear it done in a different way, it wasn't anything that really struck me as exciting. So I didn't really care for it that much. It was fun to have. It's cool to have, but it's not anything that I really revisit often. And that's why, again, it's towards the bottom. So it's something interesting to have. It's something cool to have. If you like those two songs and you want to hear them done differently, it's definitely worth trying to hunt down and pick up. But yeah, so number 21, Capital H and Mary Without Sound. Number 20, this is one that's kind of weird, and one that I debated on putting on here. Again, this goes back to some of the stuff that I have in my collection. It's kind of odds and ends stuff. But this is the Mountain Dew Showcase. And this CD has two songs for Motion City Soundtrack. It has Capital H and Red Dress. The thing with it was these were recorded live in 2004. So I look at this more of like a 5-way split. You have Sparta, Coheed and Cambria, Motion City Soundtrack, Don't Look Down, and the letters Organize on it. All of the tracks are recorded live from the show in Austin, Texas. So to me, these are unique to this. You're not going to find these tracks. It's not like the Warped Tour compilations where they just put a song from a band on there without it being a live version or anything different or unique to that. So to me, this almost feels more like a 5-way split than it does just a compilation of songs used as promotional material for the tour, like you would get with some other tours. So again, they're live tracks. They're cool to have from 2004. But they're not anything I really revisit much, like the Live at Lollapalooza. Live recordings don't really do it for me much, except for one, which I will get into much later on in the video. But this right here it's something cool to pick up. If you could find it, I'm sure you can. I picked this up on Discogs years ago, and it was one that, if I remember right, it was kind of difficult to get because it was so it was something that was, I believe, given away to people who either went to the show or as promotional for the show. But again, the songs are unique to it, and it's something cool to have. So number 20, the Mountain Dew Showcase. Number 19, this one here is one where there were actually 4 versions of this that came out. It's the Future Freaks Me Out EP. So this is the actual official CD version of it. It has the Future Freaks Me Out. It has the standard version and the radio edit. It also has 1,000 Paper Cranes on it. Now, there was a vinyl version that came out. The vinyl version is the reason pretty much why I have it marked higher than some of the others for just a 3-song EP. In fact, I think the vinyl version was only 2 songs. It was the Future Freaks Me Out, just the standard regular album version. But it was also a cover of My Valuable Hunting Knife, which is one of my favorite Motion City soundtrack like covers. I think it's fantastic, and it's definitely worth picking up that vinyl version just for that. That hasn't appeared on anything else, whereas 1,000 Paper Cranes is pretty easily accessible. So this is the actual official EP. There was also a much smaller EP that was Future Freaks Me Out and My Favorite Accident. This was promotional from Epitaph, so I don't know exactly if it was sent to radio stations or if it was just something promotional that they put out, but it's just a super teensy tiny little disc. This is actually the version that was released in the Netherlands. I have the US version in another box somewhere, but there were 2 versions of this, one that was released overseas and one that was released in the US. And then I also have this version here, which is just the Future Freaks Me Out album version and radio edit. This one was, again, promotional from Epitaph. So there are a few versions of this. Each one is unique in its own way. Definitely, if you're looking for CD, this is the way to go. And if you're looking for vinyl, it's definitely worth picking up just for that cover of My Valuable Hunting Knife. So, number 18, the Broken Heart EP. This was only available in Japan. I had ordered this when it came out from Japan. So it was an EP that was exclusive overseas. It's kind of cool. It has Fell in Love Without You, Broken Heart, and then it also has The Worst Part, which was on the Superman, the one Superman soundtrack. I can't even remember what the name of it is off the top of my head. I think it might have just been Songs for Superman. But that song was released on there, but you could get it on here. On top of that, there's 2 live tracks. When it comes to Even If It Kills Me, Broken Heart is one of my least favorite songs just because I think I've heard it so much. So this one ranks kind of low. I don't really go to it much. The Worst Part's a great track, but again, it's not worth importing this from Japan unless you're a big collector, just for that song or the 2 live tracks. As far as I know, this is out of print now. Again, I ordered this ages ago when it came out. So you can check and see if it is still available. Likely you're going to have to get it imported from Japan, or maybe check Discogs or something like that. But if I'm correct, this is out of print, and if you're looking for it just for, you know, the Worst Part, it would definitely be more beneficial to you and your wallet to just find that Superman soundtrack. So at number 18, Broken Heart EP, Japanese exclusive. So now at 17, we get into our first actual studio released full-length album, and that's Go. And I think it might be kind of maybe a little controversial to put Go at the bottom of the actual studio album list. And what I want to do is start off and preface this by saying I love this record. When this album came out, it was extremely important to me, and it was definitely a special album and one that I loved. I couldn't listen to it enough when it came out. Over the years, I've kind of found myself drifting from it. It's a much darker album than the rest of Motion City Soundtrack's releases. It's also a slower album. It's more somber. It still has, you know, the poppiness, the catchiness to it, but it's not as prominent as some other albums, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's definitely a mature album, and it's one that, again, I loved. But as I've listened to it more and gotten older, I've kind of started to drift from it some. it does have some songs that I love. Timelines is a phenomenal song. The Coma Kid really, really, really displays Matt's bass and Tony's drumming. And it's definitely an album that is worth listening to. And I want to say that by me putting it lower on the list and saying that it's my least favorite of their studio releases, it is by no means a bad album or a bad release. It's quite the contrary. It's phenomenal. It's fantastic. It's just over the years, it hasn't stuck with me as much as some other albums have. This version here looks a little different than the standard US version, which I have here. The standard US version came in a digipack. This right here is actually the Australian version. It has 3 bonus tracks: Bottom Feeder, Give Up, Give In, and Alcoholize, which those 3 tracks are fantastic. I believe they are available in like an iTunes deluxe edition, so you could get them on iTunes if you don't want to import it. But yeah, I love this album. It's fantastic, but unfortunately, over the years, it's kind of grown down in my list. So at number 17, go. Coming in at number 16 is an album that I listened to a ton when it came out, and that is the Motion City Soundtrack Matchbook Romance split. I don't like the Matchbook Romance songs at all on this. I'm sorry, I'm not really a huge fan of them. I did like their main studio albums, their LPs, but this just didn't really do it for me. However, I love the Motion City Soundtrack songs on it. When You're Around is one of my favorite acoustic songs that they've done, you know, version-wise, of one of their own songs. And Sunday Warning is fantastic. I love the slow, kind of relaxed sound of Sunday Warning on this. But later on, I'll talk about Sunday Warning again, and on an album where I liked it a little more. So, with it being number 16, again, I'm basing it just on the all-around, the tracks from both bands. It's, I think the Matchbook's romance songs kind of drag it down some. If it was just a 4-song EP with 4 Motion City Soundtrack songs done acoustically, it would probably be much higher on my list because I love these 2 tracks. Even if it was just these 2 tracks on, say, an EP for, you know, a single for When You're Around, and then When You're Around done acoustically with Sunday Warning done acoustically, it would have probably been in my top 5. But just overall and all around, it's low, mainly because I don't care enough for the Matchbook Romance tracks to revisit this album as much as I used to. So again, number 16, Matchbook Romance, Motion City Soundtrack split. At number 15, this one here might be another controversial one. It's Panic Stations. So this was the last album the band released before their breakup in 2016, and this album was one that I just didn't give it enough time. I listened to it a couple times. I was like, yeah, I don't really care for it that much. It's got a couple okay songs, but whatever. But over the years, I've listened to it more and more and more and more and more, and I've loved it more and more and more and more and more with each listen. I put this one above Go because I feel like this album here, I guess let me backtrack some. This album here feels more to me like a transitional album in a discography that has no transitional albums. If you listen to Motion City Soundtrack's albums from I Am the Movie all the way to Panic Stations, you hear a very consistent progression in their sound, and it all makes sense until I believe you get between My Dinosaur Life and Go. And there is a big gap between those two where they sound increasingly different, or extensively different. I believe that Panic Stations would fit perfectly in there. If you listen to Panic Station between My Dinosaur Life and Go, I believe that really bridges that gap, and that change in sound on Go compared to My Dinosaur Life makes a lot more sense. This album here has a lot of the poppiness and the energy of Go. In this album here, I feel like often is some of the most in-your-face tracks that they've done, besides things like, Don't Call It a Comeback. But I feel like these songs, are very in your face. The very first song, Anything at All, sounds to me like Masked Intruder. It's got a very poppy punk kind of, I want to say not pop punk, but very poppy punk, in your face kind of aggression. And I love it. And I think it's fantastic. And then it's also got songs that kind of are more melodic, more slow, and they make sense leading into Go. So I believe that this album here is much more of a transitional album between My Dinosaur Life and Go than just having Go come directly after. And I think that's where I like this album more than Go. The last track on here, Days Will Run Away, is hands down one of my favorite songs by the band. It's a bittersweet song, especially when you know that they broke up after this. It really kind of hits you. And but I mean, it's to me, it's almost as perfect of a closer as Hold Me Down was. So that's why I really put Panic Stations above Go. Again, it's not by much, it's only by 2 spots or whatever. But overall, I think Panic Stations is a fantastic album. I don't think it gets enough appreciation and enough love from people. And I think it's easy to shrug it off, especially after Go. I heard a lot of people who, when that album came out, complaining about it. Again, I loved that record, but I think that hearing that album and turning off some fans really kind of impacted this, whereas I feel like if this would have come out prior to that, it would have made a lot more sense. So number 15, Panic Stations. Number 14, this is an album that I had some trouble putting it kind of mid-tier, because I love this release. It was a 7-inch. It's the split with Trampled by Turtles. Motion City Soundtrack covered a Trampled by Turtles song. They did Wait So Long, and Trampled by Turtles did Disappear from Motion City Soundtrack. I think what drags it down is I'm a huge Trampled by Turtles fan. I love Trampled by Turtles. We, over this last summer, my wife and I took a trip to Minnesota, and I made it a point to drive to Duluth, just feeling a connection to the place from listening to Trampled by Turtles so much. And we pretty much listened to them the whole drive to Duluth from St. Cloud. So I love Trampled by Turtles, but I'm not really into their version of Disappear. I think had they maybe chose a different song, it would have been a little better. But I feel like Disappear is such a dark track, and it is a heavier track. That Trampled by Turtles covering it, I just don't think it had the same sort of effect that the Motion City Soundtrack song had. Whereas I think that Motion City Soundtrack did a phenomenal job on Wait So Long. And it's really, I mean, I feel like I like their version better than Trampled by Turtles' version. And it's hard to say that because that song is fantastic. And when Trampled by Turtles plays, especially when they play it live, you can feel the energy in that song. But I feel like Motion City Soundtrack really excelled on this and really showed just how versatile they are and how they can take a song that is like a bluegrass country song and turn it into an extremely high energy pop song, and just make it loads of fun. So the reason, again, that I put it low is I'm just not as into the Trampled by Turtles half of it as I am the Motion City Soundtrack version, or half. So again, number 14, the Trampled by Turtles split. At number 13, this was only released on 7-inch, and then there was a promotional CD that came out, and that's the Motion City Soundtrack Making Moves 7-inch. So there was a whole series of bands who did 7 inches as part of this Making Moves series. There was Farewell Continental, which I also own the CD version of theirs. There was A Great Big Pile of Leaves, and I think maybe The World is a Beautiful Place and I'm No Longer Afraid to Die. Maybe. I can't remember off the top of my head if that's who it was, but for whatever reason, my mind is saying yes. But this was the Motion City Soundtrack Making Moves EP. It has 3 tracks on it. All 3 are great. Severance and Major Leagues are both new songs that were only available on this. Pictures of Success was a Rilo Kiley cover. And the two tracks that Motion City Soundtrack do on this, that are their own tracks, are fantastic. They're great songs. I wish they would have actually been released on something more widespread than just part of the 7-inch collection, because they really are some of the best songs that came later into their discography. The Rilo Kiley cover is fantastic. When it came out, I listened to that cover on repeat. It's extremely toned down, extremely depressing, very slow, very atmospheric, and it's just a beautiful cover of it. But I put it low on the list just because I feel like there are things that that come after this, that were stronger all around. And for 3 tracks, it's kind of hard to put the 3 tracks above something, that's 5, 6, 10, or 12 tracks. But I mean, this is probably one of my favorite 7-inches of theirs. And if I was just rating, EPs or 7-inches, this would definitely be in the top 5, possibly the top 3. So, Making Moves, yeah. So coming in at number 12, this is the one where I'll probably get stoned or crucified for putting this here. Number 12, My Dinosaur Life. It is not by any means coming in at number 12, puts it in at the middle pretty much. And it puts it right over halfway. I love My Dinosaur Life. It's a fantastic album. This came out during the period where, when I said that I had only missed a few tours, this was definitely during that period. I had gone through some stuff. There were some major life changes happening at the time. My grandmother had passed away. My parents had split. We were moving out of the house that I pretty much lived in my whole life. My girlfriend and I at the time, had broken up, and I was in a huge depression. And that had happened before this album came out. And this album came out right as I was kind of transitioning out of that. But still wasn't really where I needed to be in mind. So this album here at first kind of was underappreciated by me. And there's reasons, later on in this review why. And it was one that, again, I feel like maybe it suffered from the same thing that Panic Stations did, where it came out, I liked Go so much that when Panic Stations came out, I was kind of like, is it going to match Go? I don't know, we'll see. I think that this sort of fell into that same kind of thing. Again, I mean, that's some foreshadowing, I guess, into later on in the list. But this album here was just one that I didn't really grab onto at first. However, once I did finally get my act together and grab onto it, I love this album. It got played so much. It got played on repeat. This is the standard US version. If you're looking for the CD version, the Japanese version is the way to go, just for Sunny Day. Sunny Day is a fantastic track. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube or somewhere. But it's a great track and definitely worth listening to if you haven't heard it. This album's fantastic. There's not, there isn't really a track where I can think of, I'm just going to glance over at the back here. There isn't really a track where I go like, I don't really like that one. I guess Disappear would probably be the closest track to being skippable in my opinion, just because I feel like it's significantly different from the rest of the album. That's not a bad thing, but I feel like that's the only track that I'm really ever like, I can skip this. But even then, I rarely will, because I think it's that good of a song. So this album here, again, number 12, I think that this is definitely, an album that, to me, didn't get enough appreciation at first, kind of like I said with Panic Stations. But once I did, it was definitely, it definitely became one of my favorites. So number 12, My Dinosaur Life. Number 11, this is one that people will probably be mad that I put it above My Dinosaur Life, but it is Back to the Beat. It was Motion City Soundtrack's third release, their first release being Promenade Carolina, and then they did Kids for America, and then they did Back to the Beat. So Back to the Beat is just, it's it's pretty much a whole different band except for Justin and Josh. The songs on it are fantastic. The Here Away and Opening Night are two of my favorite Motion City soundtrack songs, and I wish that this and Kids for America would get a re-release at some point in time. I reached out to Justin a handful of years ago about wanting to actually put them out myself in a unique kind of way, and he was into it, but wasn't sure because of none of the other members of the band playing on that release, how it would go. So it was kind of just agreed upon to sort of let it be how it was. So I would love to have this more widespread release. It is hard to get. It does sell for quite a bit of money, and if you could find it, definitely grab it. It's Motion City soundtrack again, like Carolina, like Promenade Carolina. It is it's a different Motion City soundtrack. It's not as synthy, poppy sounding. It's more indie rock, more in your face, more raw, and it's a great album all around. Especially if you're into, early late 90s indie rock stuff, alternative rock. This is definitely an album to pick up because it really shows the band and where they came from and just how good they were, just right out the gate. So number 11, Back to the Beat. All right, we're in the top 10 here, and this is another one where I have multiple copies. So number 10 is the This Is For Real EP. This here, I have 5 copies. There are 6 versions at least that I know of this. This is a Netherlands promotional version. This is a US promotional version from Epitaph. It just has This Is For Real on it, same with that other release. This right here is a promotional version that was sent out to DJs and radio stations. This was an Epitaph release version. This right here has This Is For Real, and it has Plymouth Rock on it as well. There was a 7-inch that came out that looks more like this one, and I believe on it has Not Asking You to Leave instead of Plymouth Rock. So again, it's yellow instead of the green. But these were, well, this one here was released, the other one was sent to radio station. This right here is definitely the definitive version of this EP. This was released in Australia. It has This Is For Real, Plymouth Rock, and Not Asking You to Leave on it. And it's also a much cooler colorway than the other versions. And this right here, I put it high on the list just for Plymouth Rock and Not Asking You to Leave. Not Asking You to Leave did appear on a later album. Again, we'll get into that. But Plymouth Rock is only available on this. It's a lifter pooler cover. And for me to put this album at number 10 for a song that's less than a minute long and another song that appears on another album, that says a lot about those songs and that cover. And all around, I mean, This Is For Real is still one of my favorite songs by the band. And it's just, this was one where I may also be putting it high because I looked for this for years. I hunted this down. This was definitely a grail for me. This one here, I had the other ones. And finally, it was probably 2 or 3 years ago, this came up on, I believe, Discogs or eBay, and I snatched it up. I didn't care what price I needed to pay to get it. I got it for a good price, but it was one that I had been after for so long that I definitely wanted to get a hold of. So if you're a huge collector of music or a collector of Motion City soundtrack, this is definitely something to grab. Again, all 3 of the songs are fantastic. This right here is kind of what I was talking about with the Matchbook Romance split, is if it was just a handful of Motion City soundtrack songs, it would be, that would have been much higher up on my list. This is definitely proof of that. Again, at number 10, This Is For Real EP. So number 9, this is where I kind of feel the splits were done right. So at number 9, this is the Motion City soundtrack Limbeck split. So this was only available on 7-inch. If you got the 7-inch, you also had a CD version of it too that you got. I have 2 colorways of this. There are like 100 colorways of this. The 2 that I have, I can't remember how many they're out of, but I believe they're rare. One's blue and one's brown. They're rarer. They're not like ones where there was a lot of. But either way, this right here was another grail for me. I remember when it came out in high school, I didn't really have a record player at that time. I didn't really care about vinyl. I was a CD guy then too. And it was one where it sold out real quick. And I was lucky enough to get 2 copies of it later on down the road. I think I had either just graduated high school or was about to graduate high school when I got copies of them. And they're still in my collection. Again, there's very few vinyl records in my collection, but this is definitely in there. The songs on it are, again, like the Trampled by Turtles split where the band is covering. Limbeck does Perfect Teeth. Motion City Soundtrack does, oh my gosh, I can't think of what Motion City Soundtracks does. The Sun Woke the Whole State. I could hear the song in my head, but I couldn't think of the title. Both songs are amazing. Limbeck is a band where I love, Hi Everything's Great, is one of those albums that I listen to so much. And I have the other version, Hi Everything's Fine, where they had different people coming in and playing the songs, and Justin Pierre is actually on one of the songs in that too. But I have that, and I listened to that album so much. And I also was a huge Motion City Soundtrack song at this time, and Perfect Teeth was one of those songs that I loved. It meant a lot to me when I was just even as a teenager. So to hear both of those bands do them, and for both of those bands to do them perfectly in their own way, to where it didn't feel like you were listening to a band covering a band, but it sounded like you were listening to a band do their own original songs. That is what I look for when I'm, looking at a split. And that's where, some of these other splits were, maybe lower ranked on here. Or, really the difference between like this and the Trampled by Turtles split is that both of these songs sound organic to the band's style, and they never once come off like they're a cover. Had it not been for knowing either band, if you would have played me, this Limbeck, cover from Motion City Soundtrack, I would have just thought it was a B-side and vice versa. So at number 9, Limbeck, Motion City Soundtrack split. So at number 8 is another one that I don't have physically. So I could either show you a copy of the CD again, or I could just go and show you the picture here of the My Dinosaur Life Deluxe 7-inch collection. So the reason I put this one differently is it is a unique release. It had the album released on multiple 7-inches. On top of that, you got the standard CD and you got an additional CD. And the reason I put this so high up is for that additional CD. You can find the tracks on iTunes, I believe, but it's different versions of many of the songs that were on that release, or on My Dinosaur Life. And the songs are a lot different. They're a lot darker. A lot of times they're slower. They have more atmosphere to them. And the versions that you hear on that are so unique and so different that it sounds like you're not that you're listening to a different band, but almost like you're listening to a different band, if that makes sense. It's not the same, energetic, super, poppy, super exciting Motion City Soundtrack. It's a much more toned down Motion City Soundtrack, more, I don't want to say somber because it's not necessarily somber or sad sounding, but they're much darker sounding tracks, and they're fantastic. If that would have existed on its own as an EP, aside from being just available in that deluxe version, I would have had that in its own number here instead of, putting it with that deluxe version of My Dinosaur Life. So it's worth it alone. If you're a vinyl collector, that's definitely the way to go. If I remember right, it came with a comic book as well. And it came with the 2 CDs. So it's definitely worth the investment. It's out of print. It's probably, if I remember correctly, it's the highest priced version of that album that there is, but it's definitely worth getting. I don't own it in my collection. I'm not a vinyl collector, so for me to own that just for a CD is kind of, for me to shovel out the money, especially just for that one disc when I already have all the tracks on my computer, it's kind of hard for me to do. So, but again, at number 8, the My Dinosaur Life Deluxe Edition. At number 7, another one I don't own. It's the only album that I don't own that has a CD release, and that is, again, Kids for America. So this was the second release from Motion City Soundtrack, and their first CD release. It was an EP. When I had talked about the Matchbook Romance split, and I talked about Sunday Warning, that song appears on this album in a non-acoustic form. And this album here is just pure hard driving indie rock. It's raw, it's dirty, it's fantastic. It's everything you would want in that type of an album and from a band. It's short, it's to the point, it's punchy, it's in your face, and it's just one of those records that I'll go back to all the time. If you're looking for good sound recording, if you're looking for commit this to memory, you're not going to find it on that album. But what you're going to find is guys who are making passionate music and really have something to say with it. And I don't even mean lyrically. I just mean there's so much emotion in the music that you can tell, like, these guys have a purpose with this. They're not just some guys who are like, hey, let's be in a band because we want to get girls. Like, these are guys that you can tell, like, this is what we're going to do with our lives. Like, this is what we live for. And I think that really sets the blueprint for later albums. And I think that is really really on display with Back to the Beat as well. You're starting to see that transition, to the Motion City Soundtrack that we all knew and all know and love. But you were seeing it earlier, and this was really that first progression between that Promenade 7-inch, which still feels like they hadn't found their way yet, into Kids for America, where you're like, okay, these guys, they know what they want to do, and they're very passionate, and they understand it. Into Back to the Beat, where you're like, okay, they're getting it more into I Am the Movie, where you're like, they got it now. So Kids for America is definitely an album that I listen to so much. 4th of December is one of those songs that I will come back to over and over and over again. Same with Sunday Warning. So if you have a copy and you're selling it on CD, please let me know. It's the only CD that I'm missing from my collection, and is one that I've been after for a long time. So if you have it, let me know. If you don't and you want to hear it, I'm pretty sure the songs are on YouTube. Again, I've had MP3s of them since I was like a teenager. So they really are, they're songs that I've been listening to for that long. So, so again, yeah, that is Kids for America at number 7. So for number 6, we're winding down now, folks. For number 6, I have Motion City Soundtrack's second major album, Commit This to Memory. So I don't know if this is like a Mandela effect or not, and I don't have any old AP magazines to go through. I did have a huge box of them, and they were in my grandpa's garage, and he got sick of looking at them, so he just like sprayed the hose all in them and then threw them in the recycling. So I don't have AP magazine, but what I'm going at with that is I am almost positive that when this album came out, it was met with pretty negative reception. And that could just be me confusing it with The Dead Walk from the Acacia Strain, which I know definitely was met with bad reception when that came out, and people love it. But for whatever reason, I don't know if I'm mixing those two up or not, and if I am, that's kind of a weird thing to mix up. But nonetheless, I'm almost positive that this was met with a pretty negative reception, especially coming off the heels of I Am the Movie, which I think so many people loved and praised and really saw them as a new, really big band on Epitaph Records, which was, just a punk rock label. So when you had this band that sounded so different coming out on it, it was really something special and unique. And they had, a lot of that punk rock edge to it, but it was something different. It wasn't just, Pennywise. So I think that coming off of that, this album came out, and this album here, there are times where it's not as energetic as I Am the Movie is. I Am the Movie, I feel like it just has that energy throughout the whole thing. Even at some of the ending songs, where they're a little slower, you still have that energy. Whereas I feel like with this album, you didn't really have it that much on some songs. You have songs like Feel Like Rain. You have songs like Resolution. You have songs like Together We'll Ring in the New Year. And then you have Hold Me Down, which ends on a very sad note. So in my mind, if I remember correctly, this album didn't get met with as strong of a reception as I Am the Movie did. However, today when people go back, it's often I see in reviews and, ranking lists and things like that, people will put this as their number one. And it definitely is deserving of that spot. I think that, with this band especially, I think their albums are so interchangeable depending on who you are. I don't think saying that Go is number one in someone's eyes is any different than saying Commit This to Memory is number one in this person's eyes, or I Am the Movie, or Even If It Kills Me, or Panic Stations. I feel like this is a band that is so important to so many people, and so many albums touch with so many people, that ranking their albums, it makes sense no matter what order you put them in. So for me, Commit This to Memory is a little lower than the other ones. Once we're getting into these upper rankings, I think that this is a little lower, and I'll talk a little more about it here after, but the standard version of this, just the regular first version that came out, is at number 6. The songs on it are amazing. They're fantastic. One time, years and years ago, back when I was in high school, I had a dream that I was at the Warped Tour, and I woke up singing Attractive Today, because in the dream I was watching Motion City Soundtrack play that, and my sister woke me up saying that I was singing in my sleep. So this album here is really one of those records where you can listen to it over and over again. I've been listening to it since it came out, and it hasn't gotten old ever. So this is one of those records where it doesn't matter who you are, how old you are, whether you listen to this album when it came out or you're just discovering this band now, it's a fantastic album, and there's no way to cut that where you go, but it has this or this or this that puts it lower. There are just songs and albums that are a little more memorable to me and a little more personal to me than this album was, and that's the only reason it scores lower. Again, I think that when you get with this band, with their discography, it's interchangeable. It doesn't matter where you put them at. Everything is fantastic. So, but again, number 6, I'm going to be kind of quick here with this, is Commit This to Memory. Now at number 5, so I'm going to actually do this one kind of differently, because I didn't really take something into consideration here. So I'm going to just do this as like number 5.5. So at number 5.5, we have I Am the Movie. This is the I Am the Movie that came out on Epitaph Records. This is the I Am the Movie that almost all people know. This is the album that started it all for most people, myself included. This album is amazing from start to finish. This is that album where I feel like the band really was at that point of going from, the indie rock style to really hitting that sweet spot with poppy indie rock with a punk edge. You had guys who were playing in, you had Submerge, who was like an emo band. You had Jesse, who came from, bands like Champagne Kiss, and who came from, the hardcore scene. So you had this punk kind of undertone. You had this influence there. You had these guys who were involved with that stuff. And you had guys like Justin and Josh, who were more indie rock guys. And when you put that together, you got this amazing mix that was something really unique at the time, and I think it's still unique to this day. There's so many bands out there who want to be, pop punk bands like Newfound Glory or Blink 182, and you have all these bands now who want to be emo revival bands who, want to sound like Fugazi, or who want to sound like, I don't know, Mineral or Braid. And but at this time, you had this band that was mixing keyboards and mixing punk with indie rock with like 90s alternative, and it made sense, and it was blended so perfectly, and everything just meshed together so well. And I think that's really where it stood out. And I remember in the Hooray for the Madness documentary, Mark Hoppus said that they were this band that, had big, sloppy, in the best possible way, I believe he said, Midwest sound. And it really was. And it was just big, and it was in your face, and it didn't have to be heavy to be in your face and for you to go, whoa, I need to watch who these guys are. I need to pay attention to this. And I think that that's what sets this slightly apart from Commit This to Memory, is that. And the reason I say 5.5, number 5.5, is because I think that number 5 would actually have to go to the original release of it. This is the second printing of it. This isn't the first floppy release. This is the second floppy release. It's the exact same. With this, it's got a different mixing to it, so the sound is slightly different on this. And when you hear this version, there's a lot to it that you hear that you don't hear in that Epitaph release. And it was one of those things where I didn't really notice it. And when I got this was one that I was after forever. And when I finally got a copy, I put it in just to listen to it, just because I was like, I'd been, after this for so long. I got a copy. Thank God. Let me play it in, put it in and listen to it. I know it's going to sound the exact same as the Epitaph version. It's missing a couple tracks. 1,000 Paper Cranes, I believe, is what's on this, not Throwdown. Yeah. So, it's 1,000 Paper Cranes, is on this. And I was like, I just want to listen to it just because I've been after it for so long that this is just kind of like, getting the trophy. And when I put it in and listened to it, I just kind of stopped, and I was like, this sounds different. Like, there's a different sound to it. The bass is more prominent. There's different things you hear in it. You can hear different little things that Tony does on the drums. There's slight differences in this version than in the Epitaph release. And it's just based on that mix or that mastering. And that's what puts this at 5. It's missing some songs that I love, but just hearing that slight difference in how it sounds really makes you feel like you're listening to a different album almost entirely. And this, to me, this right here is more of a experience than the Epitaph release. And, I have everything on my computer, and I have this version on there, as the floppy version. And I will listen to this more than I listen to the Epitaph release. So at number 5 is going to be the floppy disk self-released version of I Am the Movie. And at number 5.5, the Epitaph release. So for number 4, I kind of contradict myself a little bit here, but it is the Commit This to Memory Deluxe Edition. And I put this one separately because it came out at a different time than the standard release. It came out afterwards. And so I count it as its own release, just because it was marketed differently. It has different color scheme for the artwork. So it isn't a release that came out at the same time. This is the deluxe version. It comes with a bonus track, Invisible Monsters. It was only available originally on the Japanese version of the standard release. And I remember having it on my iTunes when it came out. I downloaded it, and it was Monsters Invisible. So I always call it Monsters Invisible, based on that from the Japan release. But this right here, the reason I put this at number 4, whereas the other one I put at number 6, is 100% based on this disc right here. So the live documentary and the live concert that are on here make this worth getting this version over the standard version. If you just want the music, the standard version's great. If you want Invisible Monsters or Monster Invisible, that song there is definitely also a reason why I put this higher. It was for the longest time my favorite Motion City soundtrack song. It's one of my favorite Motion City soundtrack songs still, but it's not my favorite one now like it used to be. But it's a fantastic track to have. If you've never heard it, definitely listen to it. But the second disc, the DVD on this, the documentary is fantastic. It's one that I watch all the time. Going back to what I was saying about my dinosaur life, about like some of the stuff that happened, the depression I fell into. I still get really bad seasonal depression, but I get it in the summer, so it doesn't really make much sense there. But in the summer, I tend to get really depressed, and in the winter, I tend to not be depressed, unlike most people who it's sort of flip-flopped. So a lot of times in the summer, I'll watch this DVD, and it'll kind of help me get through that still, even in my 30s. So, earlier on, I had said that, you know, a lot of the earlier things were live stuff, the Lollapalooza, the Mountain Dew Showcase, things that were earlier in there. But on this, they have a live performance that is live at 7th Street Entry in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And they have the full live concert. I loved it so much. I was able to, years and years ago, find the audio. Somebody had ripped the audio and put it in an MP3 format. So I went ahead and I've had those on my computer forever. And I put them onto a CD and just made my own little case for them, so that way I could keep these tracks in my collection because I love it that much. It's so fantastic to watch an old set from, you know, I think it was 2004, 2005, and you know, it's really kind of like it's kind of a time capsule, and it really you know, kind of freezes that time. And, you know, that's when I'd seen Motion City soundtracks so many times. I went to Warped Tour and would see them. You know, I'd go to 3, 4, or 5 if I could Warped Tours. I would travel wherever I could to go. And, you know, I would always make sure I saw them. You know, and watching that, it still reminds me of going and seeing them in 2003, 4, or 5. So it's one of those things that still makes me feel good and still is able to take me back and give me that same emotion today. And so I wanted to make sure I had those songs on something that I could listen to, which I still listen to all the time. It wasn't an official release, so I obviously wouldn't count it in this list. But I'm just, you know, going back to the DVD, you know, really, that's what really makes this special. I have the I Am the movie DVD that came out a few years ago. That's really rare. I don't think it has the same impact that this DVD does. And it's always nice to kind of get a look into bands that are touring, especially when you're younger and, you know, a band is younger and you get to see what life was like on the road for them and the fun things that they would do, and, you know, learn a little bit about the individuals involved. So I love watching that DVD. This is definitely, if you ask me, this is the definitive version of this album. I would listen to this over the standard version any day. I still do. And it was kind of like when this came out, my standard version just kind of got set to the side, which I think I have 5 different copies of the standard version. So, you know, they just kind of got put to the side and went into the collection. But this is definitely the version that I listen to the most. And it's definitely rightfully number 4 in here. And the thing with this and I Am the Movie is that, you know, they're interchangeable. You could put them in any way. This might be 6 one day. It might be 5 one day. It might be 4 one day. It might be 3 one day. When you're getting into this top of the list, things are really interchangeable. And, you know, I think that's really a testament to how good this band is, that, you know, depending on the day or depending on the person, you know, it can really change. So number 4, Commit This to Memory Deluxe version. So now we're in the top 3, and the top 3 here, people may think that it's kind of goofy. I don't know, maybe not. But the top 3 here are definitely, you'll kind of see a connection here. So number 3 is Even If It Kills Me. This is hands down my favorite Motion City soundtrack, full length. This album, to kind of go back and reiterate on to the summer depression and the stuff that had happened, you know, prior to My Dinosaur Life coming out. And, you know, this record came out the fall before, you know, there was big changes in my life. My grandmother passing away, my parents, my mom and I leaving the house that I grew up in, you know, having, you know, a long-term relationship come to an end, and some other stuff happened in between there too. But all kind of happened at once. And this was really the last album that I had bought that fall and listened to all through that winter prior to all that stuff happening and starting in the spring. And so for a long time, and still to this day, this album is really kind of, to me, that last bit of security that I had before all those changes happened. And this really kind of feels like that last road before a major turn. So this album is extremely important to me. In 2005, I had gotten diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, and I had always kind of known that there was something off, at least for many years. You know, I knew that the intrusive thoughts and things that I had, and like my way of thinking with stuff wasn't right compared to a lot of other people, but I didn't also think that it was abnormal or weird, or different than others. I thought that people still experience the same thing, but I just knew that there was something a little off. And I really connected to the lyrics on Even If It Kills Me, because the song, not necessarily the album, but that song, and it really feels like a song where I could connect with what Justin was saying, and really having that ending where, it's very optimistic and says like, I'll get over it, or I'll get through it. You know what I mean? Like, I have the strength and the power to overcome these problems. It's, you just kind of take it a day at a time. But that really helped me when I got that diagnosis, with saying, okay, like, other people struggle with this stuff. I'm not a weirdo. I'm not, different than anyone else. I'm just dealing with something a little bit differently. So I think that's, that song there especially is one where, dealing with mental health issues, you can really use that song to kind of empower you. And this album here, from a music standpoint, if I want to take all the emotion out of it and connection I have to it, it's their most poppy album. I wouldn't say that it really leaves behind, that harder edge that they had at times. If I say that and you put on the first song, you're going to instantly go, no, you're an idiot. What are you talking about? Because it starts off in your face, and it's right there and direct and very forward. And it reminds me, Panic Stations does the same thing. It starts off very in your face and very direct and very like, you will listen to what we're going to say here. And this album starts the same way. But it's also very, very pop driven. It's got a lot of the catchiest songs that they've written. I think that, between it and My Dinosaur Life, I think those are probably their two catchiest albums. But I think this album here definitely is their most poppy album. The most, I guess I would say, radio friendly album, even though they were never a radio band. I think that this would definitely be their most radio friendly album. And, it's one where I think that you could connect a lot. And I think this album here has a lot of Justin's best lyrics personally, at least things that I could connect to. And I had, read so many people's, top 10, top 6 lists or rankings or tier videos and posts online. And there have been a lot of people who have had connections to this album that were similar to mine. And so I think that really shows that this album came out at a point where a lot of us were going through the same sort of things, maybe in different ways. And it really helped connect with that. So I think that might also be a reason why this album is very important to people. I know that this one was one where a lot of my friends who were fans of the band didn't really connect with it. And at the time when it came out, I was working at a record store, and I would play it all the time. And there was a girl who worked with me who was a fan of, I Am the Movie and Commit This to Memory. And she's like, I don't like this album at all. Like, this is boring. It's not fun. Like, it's bad. And I thought she was crazy for that, because I loved every second of it. And yeah, it's one that I go to. I listen to this every winter, and it's one that I really connect to. And I think this is hands down my favorite favorite record of theirs. So number 3, Even If It Kills Me. So coming in at number 2, going off of Even If It Kills Me. This is the Even If It Kills Me acoustic EP. This was only released in Japan. I know you can get the songs, on iTunes if you're into digital, but this right here was only available in Japan. I have the strip, the OBI strip still, and this was imported from Japan. I didn't know this album had come out at first, and I had started dating a girl, and there used to be a thing on TVs called Music Choice. I don't know if it's still on, but it was an on-demand channel or whatever where you could go through and watch music videos. They'd have it broken down, hip-hop, pop, metal, punk, country, things like that, and you could go through and just get, music videos. You could search for music videos by artist, band, first letter of their name, things like that. And Last Night I Fell in Love Without You showed up on there, and Fell in Love Without You showed up on there. I'm sorry. And I was kind of confused because I was like, I didn't know that they did a video for this song, and it had been, a little while since the album had come out, and I watched it, and it ended up being the video for the acoustic version, and I tried to find where I could find that. I didn't know if there was a deluxe, some kind of different version of Even If It Kills Me coming out, or what it may have been. And that's when I was able to eventually discover the acoustic EP that was, like I said, only released in Japan. And I ordered it, and this right here takes the songs that were on Even If It Kills Me and just adds this whole other level to them. It's 5 tracks. You have Fell in Love Without You, It Had to Be You, Broken Heart, Can't Finish What You Started, and Point of Extinction. And it just gives them this whole different feeling. And that album is just so oozing with emotion already that when you take it and you put it into this minimalist form of being an acoustic, a set of acoustic tracks, it really adds this different feel to them while still feeling like it makes sense with that album. And it really just adds a whole different level and a whole different feeling to the music. And it is definitely, this is the pinnacle of that that release. So at number 2, the Even If It Kills Me acoustic EP. So now we're down to number 1. For number 1, I have the Even If It Kills Me 10-year anniversary LP. This is the only Motion City Soundtrack LP that I own. And, well, no, actually I lied. I own Even If It Kills Me as well. But this right here is only available on vinyl. And it has the full Even If It Kills Me album. And it has the Japanese acoustic EP. And on top of that, it has a bunch of B-sides from that era. So this is definitely this is the top of the mountain. If there's one thing that I would tell anyone who's interested in this out, and Even If It Kills Me to get, it would be this. So I'm not blocking my face. I'm going to put it down. And instead, I'm going to show you this. So this is a CD that I put together that is just the B-sides and the live tracks and things like that from that. So it's essentially the second LP, the second vinyl record that's on that, just in CD form. So I put this together just to have something so that way I could have those tracks on a CD that I could put together. It encompasses everything from that time period. And I think what was important about it coming out was this album came out in 2007, and it was one of those things where when the band announced that they were breaking up in 2016, I was beyond disappointed. Not because the band was breaking up, though that was part of it. Yes, absolutely. But I had seen the I Am the Movie anniversary show in Chicago. I had actually designed the poster for it. I've done some artwork for Motion City Soundtrack. So I've done 3 different posters for them, tour posters. And I did the I Am the Movie anniversary show and got to go to Chicago. And so I got to see that. I also got to see when they did the Commit This to Memory tour. And then a year before, I was hoping and anticipating and Even If It Kills Me tour, they broke up. So, and then they got back together, but it was already after. But I will say that when they did their reunion, they did play a lot of songs off of Even If It Kills Me, and that was definitely a highlight and one of my favorite shows of theirs that I'd seen. But Even If It Kills Me 10-year anniversary, you're going to get 3 live tracks, 4 demos, and then you also get a prequel holiday show intro version of It Had to Be You. So again, it's another kind of live track, but it's just a different version of It Had to Be You. So you're going to get all that. You're going to get the acoustic EP from Japan, and you're going to get the standard Even If It Kills Me all together in one album. As far as I know, I think the album is out of print. You would probably have to go to Discogs or eBay to find it. I'm not sure if there's any still available on Motion City Soundtrack's web store or not. I don't believe there is, but don't hold me to that. But yeah, that is hands down my favorite Motion City Soundtrack release. I won't really go into it, as I kind of covered already the music in Even If It Kills Me when I did it as number 3 there. Hopefully people enjoyed this video. I know people will do, they'll rank the 6 studio albums. I wanted to do something a little bit differently. I'm considering making a video here in the future that shows my entire Motion City Soundtrack CD collection. I have, promos, imports. I have multiple side projects, releases from side projects, different compilations, soundtracks, things that they were on. And so I've been thinking about doing a video of that. There's just a couple more things that I would like to get together before doing that video, as there's still a few holes in my collection. But yeah, so that is my 25 and a half Motion City Soundtrack albums ranked from I wouldn't say worst to best. I would just say from my least favorites, which are still good albums, to one of the greatest albums ever made, in my opinion. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much.